When his grandson working at the local newspaper was preparing a Veterans Day story, he found his grandfather's name in the archives. 1953 Bronze Star Medal recipient. 88-year-old Frank's 70-year secret was about to come out. Frank Patterson had been running a barbershop in Cedar Falls for 70 years. His customers knew him as a quiet, humble man. But none of them knew that in 1950, at age 18, he had gone to Korea and served as an artillery specialist at Heartbreak Ridge. Until his grandson Ryan, working as a journalist, found his grandfather's name on the Bronze Star Medal list. Welcome to the last stand. Do you have an elderly veteran in your family who never shared their war experiences? Have you tried to learn their stories? Share in the comments. Frank Patterson had been running his barbershop on Main Street in Cedar Falls since 1954. Despite being 88 years old, he still opened his shop at 7 a.m. every morning and closed at 5 p.m. every evening. His customers knew him well, quiet, polite, a man who loved his work. He had never married, but he acted like a grandfather to his nephew David's children. He was especially fond of his grandson Ryan. Frank's shop was like the heart of the town. Old men would come here not just for haircuts, but to chat. But Frank never talked much. He just listened. Frank had some strange habits. Every morning before opening his shop, he would check the old calendar on the wall. He would especially look at June 25, stand quietly for a moment, then start his work. Customers had noticed this but never asked. They figured Frank had his special days. Another habit was that his hands never shook while shaving customers. Despite being 88 years old, his hands were steady as a rock. Such hand skills were rare at that age. Ryan Patterson was a 26-year-old young journalist. He worked at the Cedar Falls Gazette, writing local news stories. He loved his grandfather dearly but knew nothing about Frank's past. Frank never talked about the war. When Ryan asked, he would say, "What's in the past stays in the past." This always made Ryan curious. In October, Veterans Day was approaching. Ryan had asked his editor to prepare a special issue about local veterans. He started researching to find elderly veterans in the town. Ryan was going through old newspapers in the archives section of the town library. He was looking at issues from the 1950s, searching for local news from the Korean War period. In a 1953 newspaper, he spotted an interesting headline: "Local hero honored with Bronze Star." When he started reading the story, he was shocked. Specialist Sergeant Frank Patterson from Cedar Falls has been honored with the Bronze Star Medal for his heroism in Korea. Ryan's hands started shaking. This was his grandfather. Ryan read the story 3 times. His grandfather's name was definitely there. Frank Patterson, 38th Infantry Regiment, artillery specialist. The story read, Patterson rescued his comrades who were under enemy attack during the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge and defended the artillery position single-handedly. Ryan couldn't believe it. He had no idea his grandfather was a Korean War veteran. And not just a veteran, but a medal-winning hero. He immediately took out his phone and photographed the story. There was a picture of a young soldier, but the facial features were familiar. This was definitely his grandfather. That evening, Ryan went straight to his grandfather's house. Frank was watching television. Ryan entered with the newspapers in his hand. "Grandpa, I need to ask you something." Frank looked up. "Sure, son, what is it?" Ryan put the newspaper on the table. "Is this you?" When Frank looked at the newspaper, his face went white. He stayed silent for a long time. Then he took a deep breath. "Where did you find this?" "Grandpa, why did you never tell me?" Ryan asked. Frank squinted, lost in the past. "Because I don't want to remember those days. War isn't a beautiful thing, Ryan." "But you were a hero. You got the Bronze Star." "A hero?" Frank showed a bitter smile. "I'm not a hero. I just tried to protect my buddies, but I couldn't save them all." Frank's eyes were filled with tears. The burden he had carried for 70 years was showing. That day was October 20, 1952. Frank began. "We were in our position at Heartbreak Ridge. The Chinese had been attacking since morning." Ryan listened carefully. He could feel the weight in his grandfather's voice. "Mortars were raining down on our artillery position. Tommy Williams, Jerry Murphy, Mike O'Connor, They were all with me. They were just 19, 20-year-old kids. Frank paused, caught his breath. When the Chinese attack came, I was operating the gun, but the enemy was very close. My buddies were wounded. We were out of ammunition. Frank continued. But the enemy kept coming. Tommy was covered in blood. Jerry's leg was broken. Ryan's eyes widened. He had never seen his grandfather give this much detail. What did you do, Grandpa? I kept operating the gun by myself. I had to stop the enemy until my buddies could be evacuated. Frank's voice was trembling. It lasted 5 hours. I never stopped. Until reinforcements came. I saved Tommy. I saved Jerry. Frank said. But I couldn't save Mike. He was my closest friend. He was 19 years old. Tears were streaming from Frank's eyes. That's why I never told anyone. Mike died. I lived. How is that heroism? Ryan took his grandfather's hand. Grandpa, you saved them. Tommy and Jerry lived because of you. But Mike's death wasn't your fault. You did everything you could. I never saw the medal. Frank said. They gave it to me while I was in the hospital. Then I was sent home. Ryan was surprised. Where's the medal? Frank got up and went to his bedroom. He returned with an old box. He took out a small medal. It's been sitting in this box for 70 years. Ryan took the medal in his hands. It was heavy. Grandpa, this is an incredible honor. For me, it's just a painful memory, Frank said. That night when Ryan returned home, his mind was confused. His grandfather's story was incredible, but Frank wanted to keep it secret. The next morning, he went to his editor. I have a great story for the Veterans Day special issue, but I need the person's permission. His editor was curious. Whose story? My grandfather's. Korean War veteran, Bronze Star recipient, but he hasn't told anyone for 70 years. Ryan worked for several days to convince his grandfather. Frank didn't want it at first. Why is this so important? Frank asked. Because, Grandpa, we need to know about heroes like you. The townspeople should know who you are. I'm not a hero. You are, Grandpa. And for Mike's memory, the story of the hero who was his friend should be told. This sentence affected Frank. Mike's memory. A week before Veterans Day, the article Ryan wrote appeared on the front page of the Cedar Falls Gazette. The headline read, Our Town's Silent Hero, 70, Year Secret Revealed. The article told Frank's Korean story, his Bronze Star Medal, and his 70 years of silence. The newspaper sold out in town that day. When Frank opened his shop that morning, he had a surprise. There was a crowd in front of the door. His customers, neighbors, townspeople had come. They all had newspapers in their hands, respect in their eyes. The first to speak was Tom Wilson. Frank, I've been getting haircuts here for 50 years. I never knew who you really were. Frank was surprised. I'm still the same Frank. No, said elderly Mrs. Henderson. You're a hero. On Veterans Day morning, a special ceremony was held in the town square. The mayor, townspeople, local journalists had come. They called Frank to the stage. At 88 years old, he wore a suit instead of his barber's apron. The mayor spoke. Today, we honor a hero who has lived among us for 70 years. When Frank took the stage, thunderous applause broke out. Frank approached the microphone. He looked at the crowd. There was silence. I'm not a hero, he began. I just did my duty. He paused, caught his breath. But the reason I'm here today is because of my buddies who died 70 years ago. Tommy Williams, Jerry Murphy, and especially Mike O'Connor. His voice was trembling. They are the real heroes. I'm here for their memory. Mike O'Connor was 19 years old. Frank said. He was from Boston. He wrote letters to his mother every week. He always said, when the war's over, I'm going home to help my mother. The crowd listened silently. Mike never made it home, but because of his sacrifice, others did. He was the real hero. Frank took out an old photograph from his pocket. This is Mike's picture. I've carried it with me for 70 years. After the ceremony, the mayor approached Frank. Frank, the town council made a decision. The park on Main Street will now be called Mike O'Connor Memorial Park. Frank's eyes filled with tears. Really? And we'll put a small plaque in your barbershop. Korean War veteran, Bronze Star recipient. Frank nodded. Okay, but let Mike's name be on it too. From that day on, Frank's life changed. His customers no longer came just for haircuts. They came to listen to his stories. Frank didn't want to talk at first, but over time he started telling about Mike, Tommy, Jerry. Ryan visited his grandfather every week, learning new stories. Frank Patterson is 88 years old today, still cutting hair in Cedar Falls. 2 photographs now hang on his shop wall, his Bronze Star medal and Mike O'Connor's picture. If these powerful stories appeal to you too, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We'll continue bringing you more hero stories every day. And remember, the elderly veterans around you have very valuable stories. Talk to them. Listen to them. Because these stories need to be passed on to future generations before they're lost. A 70-year silence ended thanks to a grandson's curiosity. And Mike O'Connor's memory was finally honored.